Alright, it's Barry, and today I'm going to have a go at growing some tomato slices. So this is one of those that turns up fairly frequently on like hack videos and that sort of thing, and I thought I might as well have a go at it and just see how it turns out. And as I mentioned in my other tomato plant videos, tomatoes are technically speaking a berry from the tomato plant Solanum lycopersicum, which is part of the nightshade family, and that originates in South America. They're domesticated and cultivated for food in South America before they were brought to Europe by the Spanish, and then they introduced them to other parts of the world during the 16th century. Now, I mentioned that the tomatoes are actually berries, and there are some other fruits that you might not have realised are berries as well, which includes grapes, cucumbers, aubergines, which are also known as eggplants, avocados, pumpkins, and even bananas. But that's not where the confusion ends, because strawberries, blackberries, and raspberries aren't even berries at all. But before I go off on too much of a tangent, berries are fleshy fruit that are formed from a single flower, and the ovary wall ripens into a pericarp, which is the bit that is potentially edible. And I say potentially because it does depend on the plant. The seeds are usually embedded in the fleshy interior of the ovary, which is exactly what you'll see when you cut open your tomato. But there are some non-fleshy berries as well, such as peppers and chilies, and they've just got air around the seeds, which if you've ever tried saving your own seeds, you'll definitely know how much easier it is to save pepper seeds than it is to get tomato seeds, because they're all covered in slime. There's loads and loads of edible berries, but there's a lot that you shouldn't eat as well, such as the fruits that grow on potato plants, which look just like tomatoes, except they'll definitely poison anyone that eats them. So here we go, I've got everything I need here. I've got a couple of pots, some compost, and of course a single tomato that I picked up from the supermarket. While we're on subject to supermarket tomatoes, if you haven't grown your own tomatoes before, I'd really recommend giving it a go, just because they're a million times better tasting than the likes of this one from the supermarket. The main reason for this is that most supermarket tomatoes are picked while they're still green, and then they're transported unripened, which is just to protect them from bruising, and it also means that there's a lot longer time for them to get from the farm to the shop and all the steps and distributors in between. Somewhere along the way, the green tomatoes, they're artificially ripened by exposing them to ethylene gas, which is the same reaction that takes place when you put a banana in your bag with your green tomatoes just to ripen them off at the end of the growing season. Ripe bananas give off a natural ethylene gas, which ripens your tomatoes. Anyway, I'm going off on one again. Here's our tomato, and first of all, I'm just going to cut this into a couple of slices. And the first question, I suppose, is whether we want to slice it horizontally or vertically. And I'd say for the best results, it'd be better to slice it into horizontal slices with the tomato stood up, just to give us some nice transverse cross sections. I can't find my knife anywhere. It's like nearly a year since I've used it cutting up that onion, and it's anyone's guess where that is now, but luckily I've got a saw. There we go, and there is our cross-section of tomato, and I'm sure that you're already fully aware of what the inside of a tomato looks like, but we've got our seeds inside each locule, and the fleshy pericarp around the outside, and the placenta, and what have you. None of these other bits are especially beneficial for germination, other than providing moisture and some nutrition as the flesh breaks down in the soil, essentially composting down. I actually had 2 or 3 tomatoes last year that had a germinated seed inside the tomato when I cut it open, so that was quite weird. So next, this is literally as easy as just plopping that slice on top of your compost or soil in your pot and covering it over with a nice layer of compost on top. There we are, and they are ready to go somewhere warm, and in around 5 days to a week you should have something like this. I did this one last week, so I thought I'd have some kind of progress to show on this video today. When I did this one, I kept it in my heated germination box, and it only took 3 days for the first seedlings to come through, which is really fast. I can't keep them in there though because the light isn't really good enough and the seedlings end up getting dead leggy, so I moved it into the porch for a couple of days until today, and it still carried on germinating, although not quite as fast, which is to be expected. I think my favourite thing about doing this is that it's like a ring of tomato plants, like when you get those mushroom fairy rings on the lawn, which are actually caused by one individual fungus growing underground, sprouting loads of mycelium in a big circle that develop fruiting bodies that we see as mushrooms, so that's not actually anything like a fairy ring, but that's beside the point. Anyway, these seedlings need a bit longer growing before they're big enough just to move into their own pots, but I'll make sure to do that once they are, and I'll try and grow them to maturity, and I'll include them in any updates throughout the year, so make sure you subscribe so that you don't miss those videos. And if you're watching this video in the future, I'll make sure that all of those update links are in the description as well. The biggest potential problem that could happen with these plants is to do with genetics. I don't know what type of tomatoes they were, they're just generic tomatoes, and that means that there's a chance that the tomato farm that grew the tomatoes used hybrid plants for specific traits to make them better for supermarket distribution maybe. So we could see some unpredictable results in the way that the plants grow, or they might not grow tomatoes like the ones that we had at all, or they might even just grow perfectly fine. I don't know, so only time's going to tell on that one. The one thing that we can take from all of this is that other than doing this for the fun of it, if you're only going to be growing a couple of tomato plants with the intention of having actual tomatoes at the end, it's 100% better to get a pack of seeds and grow them with those, just to make sure that you're growing a stable and predictable plants that definitely will grow as expected and definitely will have tomatoes. If you'd like to grow tomatoes this year but you're not sure where to start, check out my top 5 tomato varieties that you can grow and my guide to starting off your seeds, which I'll link in the description as well. And in the next couple of weeks it'll be finally time to start off my big tomato feeding experiment for this year, where I'll be testing loads of different methods for feeding tomato plants to see which one really is the best, and I can't wait to start that off. Don't forget to let me know in the comments if you've tried this and whether it worked for you, and I'll see you next time.